Congratulations for joining the class.
Thank you.
Late, of course.
Thank you.
So congratulations are due to me also from your side. So now let us go back to the previous day's discussion. Actually, we tried to explain the different parts of the engine, internal combustion. Just a second, I'll just check. ভিডিওটা কোথায়?
কোন ভিডিও? দুটো আছে।
ভিডিওটা
বললাম দুটো ভিডিও আছে। ওয়েট।
আচ্ছা, ওটা সময় আসলে আমাকে তুই খুলে দিস। দেখ
পরপর কি করে? এটা তো পিডিএফ খুলেছি, আবার ভিডিও পরে আসবে।
আচ্ছা, হ্যালো।
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So actually, the last day we were discussing about the engine components, but unfortunately, there's a disruption in the class. Today, I'm showing you the copy once again. Not the same sheet, but a different sheet, which I think I have drawn in a better manner. But still, it would have been better if I could have drawn it on the board, because there it is. We have the chance to erase. Here, I cannot erase. But you see, what I was trying to tell you was that there is a cylinder. If you come back, I'll show you the next one. If you come to this slide, just see this slide. You can see that there is a cylinder. You can see a cylinder, and inside the cylinder there is a piston, and the piston is having a piston pin also. Attached to the pin there is a connecting rod. Now this connecting rod is joined to a crank pin. The crank pin is an integral part of the crankshaft. And the crankshaft is not a continuous shaft, but it is, you can say, zigzag type of stepped shaft. So there are two cranks, and the crankshaft axis is slightly offset with respect to the axis of the crank pin. Have you seen this diagram? Is it clear to you? What I am trying to tell you is that the cylinder is fixed. Think that the cylinder is fixed. Cylinder has one side, one end closed. The other end, which is open. Through that, the connecting rod moves. And the piston also. Piston is basically a cylinder, but it is a, you can see, not to the same extent hollow as the original cylinder. Piston is also cylindrical object, and inside the piston there is actually I have not shown the hidden lines that way because it will make the drawing cumbrous. And the piston is capable of moving up and down. So cylinder is fixed, it is not capable of moving. It is not capable of moving up and down. It is not capable of moving in a sidewise manner. It is fixed to the casing, a foundation. Yeah, and the piston is capable of moving up and down, right? Now, why the piston will move? The reason is that between the piston and the cylinder cover, we have a gas, and that gas is our working substance, right? That gas is our working substance. For a petrol engine, that working substance is only air and fuel. So when we burn the fuel inside the air, the products of combustion that are generated are at a very high pressure. Why it will be at a high pressure? Because the heat that is liberated because of very rapid combustion. Combustion process takes few microseconds, maybe nanoseconds. So during that short span of time, when the fuel burns, it creates a lot of pressure, tremendous rising temperature also. As a result of that, the gas expands, pushing the piston down. Now the piston goes down the cylinder. This piston is connected to the connecting rod by a pin. That pin is called the piston pin. Piston pin is rigidly connected to the piston. And because the piston is moving, trying to move out of the cylinder, but it cannot go out, the piston has a maximum journey length, that is called the stroke length. So it starts from a particular point, particular position in the cylinder, and pushes up to a final point. So corresponding to that, there is a movement of the connecting rod. Now, this connecting rod movement is not linear. The piston movement is linear because the cylinder is fixed, but the connecting rod movement is a combination of linear and oscillatory pattern. So the connecting rod moves out, again it has an angular movement about the piston pin. About the piston pin, the connecting rod oscillates. As a result of that, at the crank pin end, see the connecting rod is basically, it is a rod having two ends. One end is called the piston end. Piston pin is also called gudgeon pin. Other end is called the crank end. So the crank end of the connecting rod is connected to the crank pin. And this crank pin is a part of the crankshaft. Now see, the crankshaft is, it is not a straight shaft. So when the connecting rod moves in oscillatory manner, the crankshaft rotates, the cranks also rotate, the crank pin also rotates, and there is no obstacle, rather no hindrance in the movement of the connecting rod. So that also rotates. The connecting rod moves in a plane. The piston moves in straight line. The connecting rod moves in a plane. And the crank rotates. That crankshaft rotates. So this is the thing which we are trying to tell you. We have got some animated videos, I think, sent by Ritobroto and Ayan. Now these videos are a bit fast, Videos are nice, provided you know the thing to a certain extent, then you can see the video. Because, in my opinion, I'll just show you the cursor. This is the cylinder. This is the piston, moves in a straight line, right? And this is the connecting rod, moves in a oscillatory manner. Also it moves out. This is the crank pin axis. This is the crankshaft axis. And these two arms are called the waves of crank rather. And the crank radius is the distance between the crankshaft axis and the crank pin axis. That is called the crank radius. So that is the whole thing. Now what I was trying to tell you is that, see, the videos are a bit fast for the beginners. If it is a bit fast, it may be difficult for one to understand from which side the motion comes, which one is the input motion and which is the output motion. That is the most important part. Here I am trying to highlight that the gas which is entrapped here, this is a sheet, metal circular plate, closes the cylinder, and this is a hollow cylinder. This side
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Hello.
Connection lost হয়ে গেল নাকি?
Sir, you are not audible.
হ্যালো স্যার, শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আমাদেরকে?
hang হয়ে গিয়েছিল।
আচ্ছা,
ও আচ্ছা, অসুবিধা নেই, ঠিক আছে।
অসুবিধা নেই।
তোমরা হ্যালো,
হ্যাঁ স্যার, হ্যাঁ স্যার, বলুন স্যার, আছি।
শুনতে পাচ্ছি আপনাকে।
আমি আবার শুরু করতে চলেছি, একটু দাঁড়াও।
ওকে স্যার।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে।
Maybe wallpaper.
আমরা কার্সারটা মুভ করতে গিয়ে এটা হয়েছে।
না, কার্সার মুভ করতে গিয়ে হ্যাং হয়। এটা end
করা যাবে?
হ্যাঁ, করো যতক্ষণ হয় করো।
হ্যালো।
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, আছি, আছি স্যার।
We are back to the previous slide.
ওকে।
I was telling that the first thing that I was trying to tell you was that why the crankshaft will rotate. Now, this mechanism is called slider crank mechanism. As you know, this mechanism means starting from the piston connecting rod, crank pin, and crankshaft. These four items, four machine components, when they are joined, this mechanism is called slider crank mechanism. And the objective of that mechanism is to convert reciprocating motion into rotary motion. Is it okay now? You are listening, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine. So, in this mechanism, what happens? One side is driver, another side is driven. Now, here the driver is the piston, and the driven side is the crankshaft. Now, why the piston? When the piston moves up and down, the crankshaft will rotate. That is fine. But why the piston will move down and up? That is what now I am trying to tell. When the gas entrapped between the piston and the cylinder head, when the gas expands after combustion of the fuel, piston will move down and that will rotate the crank, connecting rod, crankshaft in a particular direction. Now this particular motion of the piston is called the power stroke. And during this power stroke, the energy that will be produced is quite high. Now, a portion of that energy is stored in the crankshaft. I have not drawn the flywheel here. At one end of the crankshaft, there is a big wheel that is called a flywheel. It contains large mass and large inertia. So when the piston moves down, huge amount of energy that is produced during the power stroke, that energy gets stored through the crankshaft into the flywheel. So the flywheel rotates, the crankshaft rotates. And because of the rotation of the flywheel and the crankshaft, because of its rotational inertia, the piston going to the downmost point, the dead center rather. If it is a vertical engine, then the bottom dead center, piston upon going to the bottom dead center, it will start moving upward, because the cranks will start rotating in the continuous rotation. So the piston will now start moving upward. This movement of the piston, when it is moving upwards, that is towards the top dead center, for that whatever energy is required, that energy is coming from the stored energy in the crankshaft and the flywheel. So the energy required for the upward journey of the piston is coming from the flywheel and from the crankshaft. This is interesting, this is important also. Because when I was also a student, I was really baffled, because why the piston will move upward? It may go downward, that is fine, the gas expands. But after expanding, the gas loses its energy. Then when the piston moves up, the gas escapes out, exhausts. So why the piston will continue its 4 journeys? See, this is the scheme of a 4-stroke engine. 4 movements of the piston are necessary. Why the piston will move in all the 4 strokes? The reason is that the stored energy in the flywheel and the crankshaft, that will allow the piston to continue its journey. So out of 4 strokes, 1 stroke only is the power stroke. And the 3 other strokes, that is the suction, compression, and exhaust, they are all power consuming strokes. And power stroke, if it produces 10 kilojoules, maybe the suction stroke consumes 2 kilojoules, exhaust also consumes say 2.5 kilojoules, compression consumes say 3 kilojoules. So 3 plus 2.5, 5.5 plus 2, 7.5 kilojoules is gone. Now the remaining 2.5 kilojoules is the net output of the engine in 4 strokes. After these 4 strokes are completed, the piston starts its new cycle. So again, the new cycle produces 2.5 kilojoules. The next cycle also produces 2.5 kilojoules. So that way, how many cycles are produced per minute? If we can calculate that, we can find out total, what is the total amount of work produced by the engine. So this is the theory. Let us come back to the previous slide. I was trying to show you a sectional diagram of the cylinder piston combination. It is a full sectional, that is a diagram in full section and of the assembly. You see the cylinder top, it has got one spark plug. This diagram is for a 4-stroke SI engine. SI means spark ignition. So spark ignition or petrol engine. So here the spark plug is at the top of the cylinder. It is required to initiate the spark, which is necessary in order to start the ignition process. There are 2 valves you can see. One is the suction valve or inlet valve, and there is the, I'll just show the cursor. One is the inlet valve or suction valve, and there is the outlet valve or exhaust valve. 2 valves are there, and inlet valve, for that some mechanism is shown. Similar mechanism is there for the exhaust valve also. So these valves are to open and close the opening. This is the opening. This is the opening. So these valves are called poppet type valves. They will close the opening, open the opening. For that, they have to move up and down. So these valves should move up and down. There is a valve seat where the valve body is placed, So when it moves down, the valve opens. When it moves up, the valve gets closed. This is the intake manifold, the pipeline through which the charge means air and fuel combination comes.
Sir, hello, sir.
Yes,
Sir, shouldn't there be a carburetor?
yeah, everything will be there, but see, we are now just showing you the basic components of the engine. Carburetor is not a basic components. It is only used for a petrol engine. It is a, you can say it is an appliance. Okay.
Okay.
We have not shown it. Only I am now concentrating on the engine. Carburetor is a separate thing which we will discuss separately. Yeah, it is sitting in the inlet manifold. You are right. And the objective and the function of the carburetor is to mix air and fuel. It is air of atmosphere and fuel, petrol, in a proper mass ratio, depending on the speed and load of the engine. That is the function of the carburetor. Let us now forget it for the moment. Let us consider up to the intake manifold. Carburetor is before that. So this intake manifold consists of the intake air and fuel. And if you consider the carburetor will be before this point here. So we have not drawn it, not to make the thing complicated right now. I am now showing you this thing. Now here you see, this is called the, this is a axis of the camshaft. See, there is one shaft which is called the crankshaft. This crankshaft axis is here. The crankshaft is rotating. It is the output shaft, and from that shaft, power comes through a gear drive into the camshaft axis. There is another shaft here. There is a, you can see this portion which is connected to the casing of the engine, which supports the camshaft. So the camshaft is perpendicular to the plane of the drawing. And this camshaft is a shaft which houses a cam. Here also I have shown you a cam in enlarged view. This cam has it is basically a programmed disc, and not a circular profile disc. It is having a profile on this side. This is Archimedean spiral. This portion is Archimedean spiral. This is, you see, from the center of the plate, the radial distance. This radial distance increases. Here it is minimum, and this cross shows you the axis of rotation of this cam. The cam is rotated about its axis. When it rotates, this distance, these are fixed, uniform, right? Equal. This portion is just like the radius of a circle. The circumference of a circle. Now, after some point, you can see, from this point, the radial distance starts increasing. It becomes a maximum here at this point, and then it gradually changes in a profile and comes back to the uniform part later. So where the radial distance is fixed, that is called a dwell. That means, you see, on the surface, see, this is a three-dimensional view. On the surface of the can, we have got a roller, a cylinder, small cylinder. I have shown that follower, it is called a follower also. It is a roller or follower cylinder. And this cylinder is always touching the surface. Is always touching this surface. That means there is a. I'm sorry. There is a spring also here, and the spring pushes the roller on the cam. Now, when the camshaft rotates, why it will rotate? Because it is driven by a gear drive. There is a driver driving gear here, and there is a driven gear here. So this is a pair of gear. It's called gear train, and from this mother rotation, source of rotation, this gear rotates. What should be its revolution per minute? That is derived by the speed of this gear. And based on the rotation or RPM of this, the cam profile plates, like this one, these plates are also rotating. Now, what I'm now trying to tell you is that corresponding to each valve, there are two valves per cylinder. So for each valve, there is one cam. For the other valve, there is another cam on the same shaft. I have not drawn it. So the mechanism for operating the valve, which is called the valve operating mechanism, is similar. Now, if you have only one cylinder, two valves, so two valves means on the camshaft there are only two cams. If you have multi-cylinder engine, 2-cylinder, 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder, 5-cylinder, 6-cylinder, or 8-cylinder, depending on the number of cylinders, the number of valves will be more. And for each valve, there will be one cam. One interesting point that I am not trying to tell you is that even if we have a multi-cylinder engine, we have got only one crankshaft. There are, suppose 8 cylinders, 8 pistons, 8 connecting rods, 8 cranks connected to the single crankshaft. And from that crankshaft, power comes to a particular camshaft. There is only one camshaft. On that camshaft, cams are situated and they are rotating, they are getting their signal from the crankshaft. Now, for operating each valve, there is one cam, as I have told. So if there are 8 engines, 16 valves, then 16 cams will be there on the same camshaft.
Sir, 8.
If there are 8 cylinders, right? 8 cylinders. So per cylinder, how many cams? How many valves? 2 valves. One suction, one the discharge. Normally, there are 2 valves. So total 16 valves. For operating each valve, one cam, because the same cam cannot operate both the valves. Of course, nowadays there is another type of cam has been devised, which is called twin cam. We are not going into that complication now. Twin cams are designed for Mercedes-Benz and these high-speed engines.
Sir, what cam, sir?
Twin, T-W-I-N.
Twin cam.
Twin cam.
What the looking
Cam only in order to reduce the number of cams. See, basically, if you increase the number of cams, you are increasing the inertia of the system. The inertia part, I think you understand. Every mass has got inertia. So inertia is very, very interesting thing to be studied. In fact, I am also studying it. Inertia. You see, every system having mass has inertia, but even without mass, whether the system has inertia or not, that is also something to be studied. So that is a different issue. Let us forget that now. Now these cams profiles are not same. You understand? This profile, whatever profile you have seen. Hello? Any problem? Hello?
yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is it okay?
No, sir, any problem. It is okay.
Now, the profile of the cam is same for a particular valve. But for different valves, the profile will not be same. Why? What is the reason? Because the valve. Hello. Interruption.
শ্রাবন্তর মাইকটা একটু এ করে
Oh.
ওকে স্যার নো প্রবলেম
আমার দিক থেকে হচ্ছে না তো?
না স্যার আপনার দিক থেকে ঠিক আছে
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা।
No, sir, please continue.
না আমি যে পয়েন্টটা বলছি তোমরা কি বুঝতে পেরেছো যে ক্যামগুলোর প্রোফাইলগুলো সব এক নয়? Why the cam profiles are not same? Because each valve opening and closing time and the duration of opening are different for each valve. Because the suction valve opening time, period of opening and time of closing is different from that of the discharge valve. Now the cam profiles, the profile of the cams are basically, it's a programmed disk basically. So that controls the opening and closing of the valve. So these profiles are different for different valves. The profiles are different. And when the valves is open and when the valves is closed, that is a part of design that the designer has to design. For that there is a diagram known as the valve timing diagram, which I'll, God helping, I'll show you today itself. Now coming back, you see this follower, when this cam rotates, this distance from the axis of rotation of the camshaft to the axis of the follower, this distance changes and the follower moves up and down. There is a guide, and inside that there is a shaft which is called a push rod, right? And at the end of the push rod there is a sphere. Top of the sphere we have got a rocker arm. It's called a rocker arm. There is a fulcrum here, and when the follower moves up, due to the lever action here.
স্যার একবার রিপিট করবেন?
হ্যালো
স্যার লাস্ট লাইনটা একবার রিপিট করবেন, লাস্ট যেটা বললেন।
আমি রিপিট করছি। Crankshaft, from that the power comes to camshaft. Camshaft rotates, cam rotates, follower roller rotates. Then this rod, which is the push rod connected to the follower, that will move up and down. That will not rotate. Why it will move up and down? Because there is a guide here. That guide will not allow the push rod to oscillate. The guide will allow it to move only in a straight line. So this end of the push rod will move up and down. As it moves up and down, the rocker arm, which is in the form of a fulcrum, this one end moves up, the other end goes down, because this fulcrum is fixed. And the other end is like a collar, and this is a poppet type valve. This is the spring. So when this end goes down, the valve opens. When it opens, the gases are inside. And when the valve has to close, just the reverse action is necessary. This point has to move up, this point has to move down, and the rocker, the roller has to move, that is the follower has to move down. Accordingly, the profile of the cam, where the radial distance decreases from the rotational center of the cam, that portion will come here. Can you visualize this thing? Hello? Can you visualize? Can you understand?
So means after coming down, means can you that?
Sir, can you explain once again?
Again, I'll do, no problem. See, there are two parts. One is the valve has to open and the valve has to close. When the valve has to open, this is a lever This side of the lever has to go down when the valve has to open. This part of the lever has to move up. So when the valve has to open, this side has to move up. That means the follower has to move up. When the follower will move up, this cam is rotating, na? Camshaft is rotating, so cam is rotating. So because of its rotation, when the radial distance from the axis of rotation of the cam to the surface of the cam, when that distance increases gradually, move up. Yes,
ভাই মাইকগুলো অফ কর না।
I'm going to off.
and when the valve has to close, this end has to move up, this end has to come down, so the follower has to come down. So accordingly, during one complete rotation, 360-degree rotation of the cam, the follower will once move up and it will once come down. If you have a look here, the cam profile, see about this axis it is rotating. So for 360-degree rotation, there will be one, suppose if the roller is mounted here, it will move up once and it will come down once. That is the valve operating mechanism. We call valve operating mechanism. It consists of the cam shaft and the cam follower and the push rod and the rocker arm, fulcrum, and the valves and the spring. That all these components constitute the valve operating mechanism. So similarly, if there are two valves, two cams are there, two cylinders, 4 cams are there, like that the operation of the valves are there. And so I have explained the movement of the piston, movement of the connecting rod, which is oscillatory, and this point, piston pin point moves up and down, and this point, crank pin rotates in a circle, and that is why the central point of this crank, that central axis also is rotating. And in order to harness power, the central axis which is rotating in the form of a shaft, we connect it to the generator. The generator produces electricity. So this part I have explained. I have also explained the camshaft and valve operation. So these are the moving parts. Another moving part is this big wheel. This is a big wheel. It's called flywheel. This is also connected to the same crankshaft. And when the crankshaft rotates, this flywheel also rotates. And when the piston moves down in the power stroke, there is a lot of energy associated with the movement of the piston, connecting rod, etc. And out of that, a major portion of energy goes into the flywheel. So when the piston moves from top to bottom, comes to the bottom dead center. Then after expansion, the gases have to be exhausted. When the gases has to be exhausted, this valve becomes closed, this valve becomes open. So for exhausting the gases, some work has to be done on the products of combustion. And that work is supplied by the flywheel. After the gases are exhausted, through the exhaust manifold, after the gases are exhausted, then there is suction. During suction, this valve should open. This is the suction valve or intake valve. This valve should remain closed. So how this valve should open? By operation of this cam and valve operating mechanism. So it opens. And then through the carburetor and there is another valve called throttle valve. The mixture of the gas and the fuel and the air that is entering into the cylinder. And that corresponds to the journey of the piston from the top dead center to the bottom dead center here. So that is called the suction stroke. For that suction, some power is required, some work is required. That will be supplied. Who will supply that? That will be supplied by the flywheel. Once again. So power requirement for the exhaust is supplied by the flywheel. Power requirement for the suction supplied by the flywheel. Then after suction is completed, this suction valve becomes closed. Delivery valve is also closed. So the gas which is entrapped between the cylinder head and the piston is a closed volume of gas. The piston now starts moving upward. So as it does that, it is compressing the gas. Pressure and temperature of the gas increases gradually. And during this operation, because gas is being compressed, some work has to be done on the gas. Who does that work? And from that work will be supplied. That will be supplied from the flywheel. So you understand suction, compression. Both the work will come from the flywheel. And then after the gas is compressed, the spark will be there. Then both the valves are closed. The gas will be burned. There will be explosion type of thing. Piston moves downward, power stroke or expansion stroke. There, huge amount of energy is liberated. That goes to the flywheel again, extra energy. And after the expansion, there will be compression. There will be exhaust. After the expansion, both the valves are closed. The exhaust valve becomes open. And the piston once again moves from bottom to top. That is from the bottom dead center to top dead center, and thereby dispelling the gases to the exhaust valve. So this is a cycle: suction, compression, expansion, exhaust. These 4 strokes, 4 journeys of the piston completes the cycle. One cycle of the engine. This one cycle may take, say, 1/25th of a second. It's a very small period of time. So this sort of cycle will now be repeated again and again. So now, if I ask you the question, where from the energy for suction, compression, and exhaust comes, the energy comes out from the rotational system, that is the flywheel and the crankshaft only. And the total energy which is required for all these 3 operations, 3 journeys of the piston, like suction, compression, and exhaust, the total energy which is to be spent is supplied by the flywheel, and the energy which is lying in the flywheel in excess of that, which comes from the power stroke, that is the net energy which is coming to the axis of the crankshaft, and that is the net energy which goes to the output system. That is the net energy if the crankshaft is connected to the rear axle of a cart, the rear axle will go. So this is the operation of a 4-stroke engine. I am telling you, it's quite difficult without the engine in front of you and without the glass, but I am trying my level best. Have you understood it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So,
If you have any doubts, ask me questions, not only today, every day. And while you make questions, I answer it again and again. All doubts will be cleared. So basically, here I tried to draw one crankshaft. Incomplete, I could not draw it. Next, I once again have drawn it. I explained it also to you. You have understood it. Now I come to see what I am doing in this part. I am just explaining you the hardware of the engine, the components of the engine. If we do not know that, then the other things will not be of any help. So first I would like to know the hardware, the basic configuration of the engine. Now we come to the actual cycle. See, we have done the theoretical cycle, which is also called the air standard cycle. And we have seen that there is an Otto cycle for the petrol engine, dual cycle for the high-speed diesel engine, diesel cycle for the low-speed diesel engine. So those cycles are all hypothetical. Those cycles are all imaginary. The actual cycle I am showing here now, this is the actual cycle for a petrol engine with some deviations for a diesel engine also. So this cycle, if you look at this, you see this is the pressure axis, this is the volume axis. What pressure, what volume? P and V stand for what? P and V stands for the pressure and volume here. Instantaneous pressure and volume in this portion. P and V stand for pressure and volume here. Now you see this cycle diagram is a thermodynamic cycle. There are two extreme positions. This is the one dead center, the other dead center. This dead center means if it is a vertical engine, it will be top dead center. Hey, ota khule dao. If this is a vertical engine, then this is the top dead center, this is the bottom dead center. If it is a horizontal engine, then this is called the inner dead center, this is the outer dead center. And this line is the actual suction process, where the gas is sucked. You see this pressure, this is the pressure corresponding to the atmospheric pressure. This line is the atmospheric pressure, and in the suction stroke the pressure goes below the atmospheric pressure. Some gas is sucked. Now, I have not told you, I will tell you also that there are basically two varieties of engine. Normally for the largest variety it is called naturally aspirated. That means the air is sucked from atmosphere directly. That is called naturally aspirated engine. And the other variety is the supercharged engine, where this suction is not directly from atmosphere or air. It is from another device which is called a supercharger. Now this suction ends here. So this is the total volume swept by the piston during its journey. This is called the stroke volume. I have written stroke volume. Suppose this volume is, you will see that in the card it is written that 1400 cc, 1500 cc, 1600 cc. Cc means cubic centimeter. That is the stroke volume of the car, and that is this volume. Piston swept volume or displacement volume or stroke volume. So after the suction is complete, the next stroke is compression. This is the curve of compression. Theoretical curve is reversible adiabatic in the Otto cycle, diesel cycle, dual cycle. But actual curve is neither reversible nor adiabatic. It is a irreversible process. That means if you draw the temperature entropy diagram, it will be associated with an increase of entropy. Now, actual cycle, the compression should be from the bottom dead center to the top dead center. The compression should be over at the top dead center. But actually, there is a spark that occurs in a spark ignition engine, and we allow this spark to occur slightly before the top dead center. Why? Because you see, after the spark occurs, why the spark is there? Because you have to burn the fuel. But the fuel will not start its ignition and burning automatically. After the spark occurs, the combustion does not start automatically. There is a lag. So after the spark occurs, there is an ignition lag period. So we require some time for the combustion to start, because a lot of chemical reactions, which are called preliminary reactions, preparatory reactions that occur in the air-fuel mixture. So from this point, when the spark occurs, to this point, this is the point which is called the top dead center. The pressure rises, but this is not because of any combustion. Combustion will start, when the combustion starts, it starts somewhere here, right? So this portion of the curve, compression curve, this compression is associated with a increase in pressure, decrease in volume, but this is because the piston is moving upward, both the valves are closed, so the gas is an enclosed gas and its pressure increases, volume decreases, and temperature also increases. Now at this point, spark occurs. After spark occurs, the ignition is there, and then the combustion may start here itself, here itself. It may start anywhere depending on the timing of the spark. The spark may be advanced to some point or may be retarded. Depending on that, the combustion may start either before or after. And how we'll be able to understand that the combustion has started? When the combustion has started, there will be a flame generated in the combustion chamber. So the starting of the combustion will be signified if I have a camera, high-speed camera in the cylinder that takes the snap of a flame. A flame front is created. That is called nucleus of flame. Spherical flame will be created around the spark plug. So we say that combustion is started at that point of time. Or if we study the pressure inside the cylinder, now when the pressure starts rising from this point, you see the pressure starts rising. The increase of the pressure signifies that the combustion goes up. And maximum pressure is attained somewhere here. The Otto cycle wanted that the pressure maximum should be here. Diesel cycle wanted the maximum pressure should be somewhere here. But actually the curve moves like this. It is a combination of vertical and horizontal. Then it comes here. This point, if you take a projection on the v-axis, we will see this is not exactly top dead center, slightly away from the top dead center. How much away from the top dead center? If you find out the corresponding position of the crank, because the crank moves, you see the movement of the piston, corresponding to that, you can get the movement of the crank also, because the piston moves it sweeps some volume, but the crank is rotating. If we consider this is the 0 degree point of the crank, and the crank starts rotation in this direction during the suction. So this is 180 degree. Then compression, theoretically, this is also 180 degree rotation. Expansion, again 180 degree. Exhaust, 180 degree. So total is 720 degrees for a 4-stroke cycle engine. And if we go to the actual diagram, the pressure rises and we find that the pressure becomes a maximum, not at the top dead center, but around 20 degrees, 18 to 20 degrees away from the top dead center position. The pressure becomes the highest pressure, and at which point it will be maximum. That depends on the rate of liberation of energy by combustion with time. or rather the rate of pressure rise also with time, or rate of pressure rise with the theta, crank angle rotated from the top dead center position, we term it as the angle theta. So dp d theta or dp dt, that you can see it has a positive slope. It increases and gradually the slope becomes 0, and this is the point where the maximum pressure occurs, maybe 22 degrees from the top dead center. From engine to engine it is different. After that, because of this high pressure achievement, see, our objective is that we want the highest pressure to occur as close to the top dead center as possible. We want that. Why we want that? Because until and unless the combustion is over, the expansion will not start. We are interested in the expansion process, because the expansion will liberate the energy. And if the combustion takes more time, suppose if this curve rises, takes a lower slope and becomes a peak pressure here, so around suppose out of 180 degrees, suppose 50-60 degree rotation of the crank is gone, then another 120 degrees left for the power stroke to occur. But we want the pressure should be, peak pressure should be achieved as close to the top dead center as is possible. So normally it is 18 to 20 degrees away from the TDC, and after that the remaining portion of the crank travel, which is 180 minus 100, 180 minus 18 degrees, 162 degrees, that is called the journey of the crank where power will be liberated. And at the end of it, you see the pressure gradually drops. And again the pressure drops. Why it drops? Because the piston is moved to the farthest point. Because the pressure drops, volume increases, so the pressure drops. After that, there is no more energy left in the gas, so the pressure comes down. And this is the line which is the atmospheric pressure. And for the exhaust to occur, the gas has to be slightly above the atmospheric pressure, so that from the cylinder inside, the gas can be able to come out and come down to the level of the atmospheric pressure only at the top dead center position. So that is the end of exhaust. So this exhaust process. So these 4 operations I have written here: suction, compression, expansion, exhaust. This explains the operation of a 4-stroke cycle engine. In fact, while doing this, while explaining to you the actual PV diagram, I am also explaining the operation of the 4-stroke cycle engine. There is another variety, 2-stroke cycle engine, which we will discuss after this. Now, at a different day. So, you tell me this part is okay or not?
So can you once more
Yes.
tell why the Pmax should be as close as the to the top dead center? Can you tell me once more?
Why the exhaust pressure you are telling, no?
Sir, Pmax.
Pmax, why should the Pmax be?
Pmax should be close to the top dead center position of the piston. You understand? Hello? You see, this is the piston, na? Moves up, down. So there is a maximum distance that it travels. This is the top dead center. I have not shown it here. Otherwise it will strike against the valve. So it stops somewhere here. And there is a point, the bottom dead center also. That is the stroke length of the piston. Now we want that, suppose if you talk about the compression stroke starts from here. Piston moves up, right? Both the valves are closed. Now the spark occurs somewhere here when the piston is here. This is suppose the top dead center position, slightly before the top dead center position. That means then the spark occurs. That means then, if you think about this crank position, this angle, this crank is like this. When the piston is moving up, this crank is, you see, it is coming from here to, from here, it is going like this to here. This journey from here to here, it is this corresponds to compression. When it starts, this is the rotation of the crank for suction. This is for compression. This is 360 degrees. Then this is expansion. This is exhaust. You understand? Can you relate the journey of the piston to the journey of the crank?
Sir, can you again repeat the relation of the reciprocation and rotation?
Relation, yeah, that is what I am now trying to tell you gradually. See, this piston, when it is at the top dead center, right? This pin, the piston pin is also somewhere here. Then when the piston is at the top dead center, then this connecting rod, right, becomes vertical. You understand? Connecting rod becomes vertical. Imagine that the piston is at the top dead center position. Then this connecting rod becomes, it becomes vertical. And this crank pin comes here. So this is the position of the crank, and this is the position of the connecting rod when the piston is at the top dead center. Then what is this angle? What is this angle? 0. Is that right or wrong?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So that is at the beginning, when the piston is at the top dead center. At the piston is at the top dead center. Piston pin is somewhere here at the top dead center. Crank pin is here. This is called the crank position corresponding to the top dead center position. This is the crank position vertical corresponding to the top dead center position of the piston. And the angle theta is 0 degree. Now suction starts. This valve opens, this valve is closed. Then when the suction starts, the piston comes gradually down. So this angle theta gradually increases from 0 degree to, comes to 90 degree. Then from 90 to 180 comes. When it becomes 180, this point, this crank pin rather, comes here. So this crank again once again becomes vertical, and the connecting rod, this point, this piston pin comes to somewhere here, that is the bottom dead center. Piston comes, this thing is connecting rod becomes vertical again. This connecting rod becomes vertical up to this, and the crank is up to this. That is the position. So 180 degrees is the journey of the crank in order to complete the suction. After suction, what happens? The crank starts, this rotation is continued. So the angle theta, which was 180 degree, now it becomes 181, 182, 183, like that. And it comes to 360 degree. From 180 to 360 degree rotation of the crank, this piston moves from this position to, that is BDC to TDC, top dead center, bottom dead center to top dead center. Now, please tell me, can you visualize? Can you understand? No
Yes, sir.
hassle. If you cannot,
Yes, sir.
ask questions, no problem.
Sir, but the answer of that question means Pmax
Well,
Most-
that I have explained a lot of things, but I deviated from that. Yeah. Now, what I was telling, suction and compression is over. Then the power stroke. Acha. Now, when the compression was taking place up to 360, I forgot the question totally. When the theta was coming close to 360, before that, suppose 15 or 20 degrees before 360, when say theta is 330 degrees, let's say, or 335 degrees, then at that instant, what is the position of the crank? Crank is something like this. Connecting rod is something like this. So this thing is coming to this side. Piston is here in the upward journey. Then the spark occurs. And when the spark occurs, there is some preparatory time. After that, the flame front is seen, signaling the pressure rise has taken place. So the pressure rise takes place maybe somewhere here, maybe slightly before TDC. But when the piston goes to the TDC, the pressure here is not maximum. Actually, the pressure should be maximum when the piston is at the top dead center, but the pressure becomes maximum when the piston, after reaching the top dead center, it is slightly down. After reaching the top dead center, the piston comes slightly down. Why it comes down? Because this crank, it coming to 360 degree, because of inertia, it moves in this direction. It's maybe 10-20 degrees at that position. That is after crossing TDC, 20 degrees after crossing TDC, then the pressure becomes maximum. May not be 20, maybe 18, maybe 16, but after. Why after? Because the combustion should take some time. No? Combustion is a process. It's a reaction process that takes some time. And it takes some time in order to get completed. It takes some time, and during that time the pressure here builds up. Maximum pressure occurs when the piston it has crossed the top dead center. So that is, by this diagram you can see here, this point corresponds to the top dead center. But
Sir,
that at top dead center pressure is not maximum. Pressure has become maximum only some degrees after the top dead center. This diagram is PV diagram. You can write also P theta diagram.
sir,
Okay. Yeah.
Theta. Okay.
Yeah, it can be also written as P theta. That is every volume. See, what I am telling is that every volume here corresponds to some angle here. Every volume here corresponds to some angle here, right? So for any volume, you can plot a theta. Just like instead of PV, you can write P theta. So, hello, I'm trying to explain the P theta diagram to you. So that is the thing. After that, just I'll take some water, just a minute. Give me 1 minute time. 1 second.
Yes, sir.
After coming to this point, this is the expansion process. Theoretically, it should be over here, but actually, the exhaust valve opens slightly below, before. That I will explain later, of course. Now you think that the expansion process ends here, and the exhaust starts here. So if you correlate pressure volume to pressure versus theta, so that theta we are getting from here. Theta is the angle you are getting. So this angle theta varies from 0 degree to 720 degree for a 4-stroke engine. Now tell me any questions you have?
sir,
Yeah.
Sir, said during the suction stroke, when the piston is moving down, the vacuum is created, and then the air and fuel mixture is coming inside the cylinder. My question is how the volume of air fuel mixture is controlled. That means how much volume will come inside the cylinder.
Yeah.
How do you control that?
That how much volume will enter into the cylinder? It's a very good question. First of all, I'll tell you one thing. See, if you think theoretically, right? If you think theoretically, the top dead center position, from this the piston starts downward journey, and the bottom dead center position, where the piston completes its downward journey, that is the suction, right? So the suction stroke corresponds to the sweeping of this volume. That is, if this is diameter pi by 4 d square into this distance L, that volume is called the swept volume or displacement volume or stroke volume. So that is the theoretical volume which is to be sucked, which should be sucked. But actually, the volume which is sucked is less. I mean, this volume, theoretical volume, corresponds to some mass of air, some mass of fuel. I mean, this volume corresponds to some mass of the charge. But the actual mass which is getting inhaled is less than the mass corresponding to this volume. Why? Because you see, when the piston is at the top dead center, suction does not immediately, I mean the gas which is entering has not come to the piston. When the piston is slightly down, creates a negative pressure here, pressure falls, then the gas starts coming, and between the gas column and the piston, right, there is always a gap. Try to visualize. See, the piston is moving very fast downward, and the gas is trying to catch up with the piston. There is always a gap between the two, because there is a vacuum between the receding piston and the downward advancing gas. There is always a volume in between, which is called a vacuum, which is to be occupied. The gas wants to occupy that volume during suction, but that volume always remains in between the piston and the advancing gas column. That means it is never possible that the gas will actually touch the surface of the piston. As the gas is moving down, it will actually touch the surface of the piston. That will not happen during the downward journey of the piston. There will be always some gap. And when the piston is at the bottom dead center position, the gas is not, the column of the gas is not at the bottom dead center position, slightly up. So some less volume than the stroke volume is actually filled up. So from that the concept of volumetric efficiency comes. Then when the piston starts its upward journey, compression stroke, the gas which was coming down, because the piston is starting its upward journey, the gas does not know that the piston has started its upward journey. So the gas will not be able to negotiate. The gas was coming down, with its inertia it continues that. Piston has started its upward journey. So they will meet during the compression stroke. When the piston moves upward and the gas comes downward because of inertia, So they meet somewhere after the VDC, somewhere, and that is the actual volume of the gas. Corresponding to that, the actual mass of the gas will be less than the mass corresponding to the sweat volume or the stroke volume. Had the gas been able to occupy the entire sweat volume, or had the gas been able to occupy the entire stroke volume, we could have got some amount of some mass of the gas entering into the cylinder, but actual volume, actual mass of the gas which is entering is much less. There may be a term which is known as the volumetric efficiency, that is actual mass of gas inert by the theoretical mass, that is around say 90%. That means 90% of the volume. Have you got your answer?
Yes, sir.
Sir. Sir.
You see, you have to visualize the dynamic process of the piston coming down, the gas coming in, piston coming more down, the gas coming more in, gap is there, piston comes to the bottom dead center, gas is still coming in, piston moving upward, gas is still coming in, piston meets the gas. Then the valves, then the suction valve, when the piston meets the gas, in fact, from the bottom dead center upwards, both the suction and discharge valve becomes closed. So then the gas is a enclosed gas. Then the piston moves up, compresses the gas, and its pressure, volume, and pressure and temperature both rises. And when the piston is at the top dead center in the compression stroke, when the piston comes to the top dead center, then the pressure is maximum. Pressure of the gas becomes maximum. And at that point, I mean slightly closer to that point, the spark occurs. Why the spark occurs at a point where the pressure of the gas is very high? Because then for the spark, it is easier to start combustion. Because for combustion, you see, for combustion, what is required? For ignition, what is required? The temperature of the fuel corresponding to its ignition temperature has to be attained. So, in order to attain that temperature, if the gas is compressed, if the gas is heated, then the fuel is also heated. So, when the gas is heated, when the piston is nearer to the top dead center, then if we start the spark, then it will be easier for the fuel to attain its ignition temperature. And that is the reason why the spark occurs closer to the top dead center position of the piston. Not, I mean, theoretically it is exactly at the top dead center, but actually it is not so. As you know that for after spark there is an ignition delay and there is a preparatory reaction, set of reactions go on. So it takes some time. So that's why the spark, we are designing the system in such a way, we are engineering the system in such a way that the spark occurs slightly before the piston attaining the top dead center. So when the combustion starts and when the peak pressure is attained, the peak pressure is attained very close to the top dead center. Suppose if you make the spark when the piston is at the top dead center, then the combustion will start further later and the peak pressure will attain when the piston has gone down during the downward journey. That we don't want. So
Sir.
to be very close to the top dead center.
Sir. Sir.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, can we end today, sir, here?
Pardon?
Sir, can we end here today, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir. Sir, I just have one question, please. Hello, sir. Sir, as we know, the combustion is happening after the piston, after the piston goes down from the top dead center. Then that's why we are sparking before the combustion.
Combustion is not occurring after the piston has crossed the top dead center. What I am telling is that if you look at this curve, combustion, see the spark is here. You see, where is the spark? The spark occurs here. So that means the piston is still in the compression stroke. It's come to the top dead center position. Compression stroke is not complete. Then the spark occurs. Before that, after the spark, piston moves up to this much distance. Then the combustion starts. Then the peak pressure attains here.
So combustion
exactly
not happen at the top dead center, na?
after the top dead center.
Yes, sir. I'm just telling that if we spark the gas, the air fuel mixture before we are sparking, that combustion is happening after top dead center, 18 to 20 degree. If
Combustion is not happening after top dead center. Combustion is starting before the top dead center. I mean, why we are advancing the spark? Theoretically, we should have had the spark at the top dead center, but why we are advancing the spark in the compression stroke? Because we want to give the combustion more time. We want whatever time is required for the combustion to take place can start from the point after the spark has attained. So combustion starts maybe slightly before the top dead center. You understand?
So when the combustion is end,
and combustion becomes over only after a few degrees from the top dead center. That is what I am telling.
so if we spark before few degree as we are sparking, then
Yes. In this,
if we spark before as we are sparking at 5th degree, then our combustion will end at the top dead center.
you want to make the spark before much earlier, so that the combustion
The
ends
few
at the top dead center, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Then
No,
we will
there is a problem. Problem is that it's very difficult, how much time the combustion will take. It cannot be very accurately calculated. As it is in microseconds, or even less than that. So we do not exactly know where to do our spark. If we advance the spark more, create the compression stroke, suppose you make the spark somewhere here, right? Here, okay?
yes, sir.
What is the pressure? Much less. See, as the compression proceeds, the pressure gradually increases. If we advance the spark more during the compression stroke, then the pressure of the gas is much less. Then even if you do the spark, it will not burn. So that optimum analysis has been carried out. If we advance the spark too much, it may happen that because of the very low temperature of the gas, even after the spark, ignition will not occur. Do you follow? Suppose the fuel ignites at 580 degrees Celsius, and suppose the temperature here is 380 degrees Celsius, or maybe say 180 degrees Celsius. Now, if after the spark, the temperature increases say to 400 degrees Celsius, that is not enough, because the fuel will not ignite if the temperature is less than 580. So we have to make our spark only at that point, so that the gas is sufficiently compressed, the gas is sufficiently pressurized, and the gas is sufficiently at a high temperature, maybe around 380 degrees Celsius, so that after spark it attains 580 degrees Celsius. Some time is required, but it attains 580 and then the combustion will start. See, the initial temperature of the fuel has to be attained. For that, the spark is helping us, but the spark alone cannot do that. The gas has to be compressed properly.